First of all, I want to thank you all for being here, and also thanks Azida for the wonderful presentation just earlier. This was really fantastic to hear all the research and the incredible information about AI. So now we continue with the conversation between myself, Neil Beloufa, and Bahar Noorizadeh. It's really a pleasure and an honor to have these two artists here with us tonight. Bahar is an artist, writer, and filmmaker based in London. Her work looks at the relation between art and capitalism mainly, and examines the notions of imagination and speculation as they coexist with one another. Much of her research focuses on the history of economics, cybernetic, socialism, and activist strategies. And she's the founder of a co-authored socially connected project called Weird Economies, which traces the economic imaginaries that shape the financial arrangements of our current moment. And her work has appeared in many exhibitions, notably at the German Pavilion Venice Biennale of Architecture 21, but also in other biennials such as the Taipei Biennial, Tate Modern, and different programs around the world. And you completed a PhD recently at Goldsmiths College in London, where you had a doctoral fellowship from SSHRC. And Neil Beloufa is an artist who is based in Paris. His practice questions society and the issues that the various media are shaping the world that we live in. I would say, possibly, he used to work extensively with film, sculptures, installations, and exhibitions. And the practice that you are leading now is far more complicated and complex than the purely expositional processes that were your focus before. His work has been exhibited in many places, such as the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Institute of Contemporary Art in London, the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, Palais de Tokyo in Paris, and you participated in the 55th Venice Biennial and the Lyon Biennale most recently. I think we have a number of materials that relate very much to what we listened to earlier, particularly around the notion of AI and generative, let's say, worlds, but also the process through which an artistic practice now shifts into a practice that relates to understanding and utilizing the nature of data that we're exposed to, or the nature of data that the technologies are utilizing for different processes. Also, I think there's going to be like more of sharing information between the different projects and then having a conversation on this. But on this, I think the question of how the artist interferes and intervenes in the incredibly complex systems somehow, and how the artistic practice could be an extension and a continuation of the structural possibilities that the systems can provide in reality to circumnavigate them and to transform them is something that for us has been quite interesting in the research that we're doing here at LUMA, and also brings us closer to the practices that you have defined and you continue to explore in your work. So I think maybe we can start, Bahar, with some of the examples of your work, and then we'll continue into Nails, and then we'll have this conversation.
Yeah, maybe, starting, thank you first of all for that introduction, and thanks for the invitation to LUMA. Maybe it would be good to kind of like ground ourselves in where like these kinds of explorations started, because I feel like Neil and me, maybe we have like a slightly different but kind of similar approach to this kind of structural shift, as you were pointing out. So my kind of like this phase of exploration in my work maybe started in around 2017 when I started thinking about finance and economy through thinking about the art economy. And I don't mean like art market necessarily, even though market is a good manifestation of how the art economy functions. But I was essentially thinking about the global contemporary art and the question of the regulation of an informal system, which came from a kind of like a personal understanding of like the flaws of like informality in this system. But then very soon that became like both a theoretical investigation and understanding of contemporary art as like to borrow Frederick Jameson, whose name came up in Kim Stanley Robinson's talk, like to borrow from him, like in a way like global contemporary art becomes a cultural logic for neoliberalism, and so we have to understand how neoliberalism manifests culturally, symbolically on that kind of scale, and a historical investigation. So I started looking at these, historical precedents of large-scale planning, like if the idea of, if the kind of like ideal of regulation is some kind of an expanded planning. Some of these examples that came up was the experiments in Soviet Union and in Chile on automated planning, central planning of the economy, which some people kind of coined as the other internet, the story of the other internet, which was, kind of evolution of cybernetics in the service of communist utopian thinking rather than the way that we use the internet today. So I made a film which maybe, since we were planning to show some excerpts I can show you like a minute or two of. Oh, sorry. So this film called After Scarcity in 2018. It's kind of like the start of these explorations, and basically it's kind of retelling that story of Soviet cyberneticians and the idea of central planning. I probably kind of skipped through just a few sections very quickly. Oh, that's not necessary.
Кибернетика впервые в истории человека позволила заглянуть немножко в будущее. То есть уже сегодня, на современном этапе развития кибернетики, можно ставить вопрос о следующей ступени увековечения личности, человеческого бессмертия. Когда человек, творец, может оставлять потомству не только готовые результаты своего труда, но и свой творческий метод. И не исключено, что придет такое время, когда будет возможен переход человеческого интеллекта и чувств, эмоций полностью в память электронной вычислительной машины. Прекращение существования человека в этом новом кибернетическом облике может произойти либо в силу несчастного случая, который никогда не исключается, либо в силу собственного человеческого желания. Ну, примерно так, как это, скажем, сказано у одного из моих любимых поэтов Гёте в его знаменитом Фаусте. Когда воскликну я мгновенье, прекрасно ты, продлись, постой, тогда готов мне цепь пленения. Земля разверзлись предо мной, мою неволю разрешая, пусть смерти зов услышу я, и станет стрелка часовая, и время минет для меня.
Виктор Николаевич, а вы сами хотели бы обрести бессмертие с помощью компьютера?
Да, конечно, да.
Just quickly, I mean, again, because at that point, like Frederick Jameson was kind of an influential figure for this work, and some of his quotes is here. And I mean, the general idea also, Jameson wrote a paper on this about Walmart as the image of the future. So the reason these stories had a reemergence in 2018 very quickly after the financial crisis was this moment that people started to rethink about the possibilities after finance and financialization. And so there was a return to these thoughts at some point in the kind of the reemergence of this, the ghost of cybernetic socialism in Amazon and Walmart and these mega corporations which have the capacity, the computational capacity to realize these plans. So yeah, it's called I called it a sci-fi documentary, just to end on that, because it's kind of taking that history and trying to project it into some kind of a future.
You spoke earlier a bit about financial fiction at the same time as we were discussing about science fiction. Do you want to say a few things about financial fiction and what it means and how it relates to your work? Because it has an element of this in what you also saw in your images through efficiency somehow, data transmission. There's the financial but also the fictional element very, very prominent.
Yeah, I mean, I can also go after Neil if I'm talking too much, but I think the kind of the turn to and the understanding of finance and the temporal element in finance came after the making of After Scarcity. Which, that's where kind of the link to speculation emerged in my kind of work and thinking on kind of so basically, I mean, what I did throughout my PhD was to think about this coexistence of art and finance in these futural operations, and this question of if art and finance has so much convergence, can art say something about finance capital? But I don't mean it in a romantic way, I mean it in a very kind of concrete way, because if you look at financial culture, I mean, it's great to go after this talk by Shazad. Also, the finance culture completely mimics artistic lifestyle. It's not like a new thing, people have been talking about it forever, but yeah, there's this presence of fictiveness, for the lack of a better word, which you might call just a human social political element, which is completely embedded in corporate the corporate word building. So yeah, I used a friend kind of jokingly said financial sci-fi as financial fiction at some point, and I'm just reusing it as some of the work that I'm doing currently. I call it finance fiction, sci-fi.
Neil, for you, when was the moment when you shifted your practice from what you were doing, let's say, before to a new structure that you is possibly closer and more relevant to what you're doing now?
Basically, what interests me in life is models, and I'm convinced then that constraint and models create forms more than me or more than the author. I mean, there is a reaction. And so what have been called my practice was working with people, constraints, and models to produce a work. And therefore is this implies trying to change models and use tools for that, or political strategies or stuff like that. And these have created a flux of artworks. I can show how those stuff articulated, and then go to new attempt. So I'm not sure it is science fiction, but
Whoops.
It's on purpose.
Okay.
So boom. I'm gonna show a stupid trailer.
Screen talk.
Screen talk.
So it's a stupid trailer. So basically, this is a work that is the recycled work, actually, from 2014 that we released on the internet. I'm going to show an excerpt. So basically, in 2014, we wrote a script with doctors on Skype trying to solve a pandemic, only on Skype, and selling a cure to the world. I'm going to show an excerpt. And then, if internet helps.
Screen talk.
Everybody keep calm. Who's having
I'm going to press stop for 3 seconds. No, so basically in 2014 we shot videos that was goofy science fiction. A bit of a weird script that was just happening through a social network, and where and to do it, the point of interest was how do we do to lock people on a computer and have everything going through creating datas. And so it was at a moment where there was Ebola and stuff like that. So we used a global pandemic in order to do that. It didn't mean much at the time, and then it...
So are you.
Rome, then the world. People will start coughing, then they'll start to see things. I call this phase obtuse hallucination. It's the first sign of the sickness. I can't fully diagnose the final phase yet, as I have a patient in quarantine. And she shows signs of acute malice to everything and everyone, but I will formulate my report shortly. Now, if you look at this cantenary arch here, I call this my beauty, Mamelon bliss. It's the marvelous mountain where everything goes back to happily ever after. It's where we need to be, ASAP, pronto, if you want to avoid human casualties. Suki and I can take you there if you trust us. And trust us you should.
So it's a lot of, we got the idea. So this kind of comedy, in order to distribute it, so when it was made, it was really a super long bad art movie. And it didn't change much, but we tried to make it as an app online during lockdown and recycled it to distribute it. Through this app, what we tried to do is integrate structures of cultural distribution at this time. And so now the trailer will make sense. So basically you have a stupid question, you can gain something, you gain stock options, fake stock options. And the more point you have a username, so you're a person. And the more point you have allows you to buy, get art. We had stupid quiz to validate knowledge. And so we tried to really integrate the way we were consuming culture at the time. When we did that stuff, we added a blockchain layer just to try to make the paper you would win as an artwork. And and we distributed, basically we copied the model we wanted to criticize to do it. Then the world reopened and we brought it to the world. So this is a commercial gallery, but we tried also in museums. And so basically the username online, the user account, became a data like your ID. And so it's a long shot for you. But basically, so we made that project into a weird document of the moment we were in. And so you had to log on the artwork in order to activate them, in order to generate It allows us to count your engagement, so we play with economy of attention and try to criticize it at the same time. And you have the same point online and in the physical world and stuff like that. You can speak with chatbots that make jokes, that have social networks and stuff like that. So that's boom, it speaks and it has internet. And then you log, and we try to use every possible technology or systems we were seeing around to play. So yeah, it's a bit of a satire of COVID moments. And visitors would gain points and being incentivized. Then there is the immersive area, where the island of cheaters. Yeah, that gives you the answers to the stuff. Then you can defiscalize your points. It's going to come after. So you log here, and you're going to defiscalize into the virus. So yeah.
How was the audience's response to this, to the exhibition, particularly to the physical space?
So basically, I'm going to stop. Yeah. So then you customize your artwork. The whole thing was a bit satirical, but the game was, it was a show in a gallery that you had to pay to enter in, and nothing was for sale, but everything was to gain out of the
experience,
out of staying long, basically. So and that's what was interesting to me, was like so people had fake stock options, were speculating on the works, playing fake, you had fake news. When people were defiscalizing, we would take a picture of them and denounce them also. But then what we were doing also is that the points they had were coins to really get the artworks. So what happened is, for a gallery, we had like a lot of visitors, mostly 18 to 25, or families, coming several times to
play,
but gain the artwork. So the relation was like a bit of a decentralizing for me, with the position of an artist, centralized person, was like to spread the value of the work towards people that wouldn't have the means, out of the time they would spend playing around with the machine. So it's a small tweak, a small attempt. And the limits of those stuff, so I can show several attempts like that, were that, so we lost a lot of money actually.
Yeah,
because tickets were really bad. So it was just even an economic symbolic gesture. Yeah. So it's just, again, a decorum, or good for speech, not efficient and not, there is no possibility of making it a protocol or use it. So we started to want slowly to kill a bit the symbolic in order to be able to propose models that can be used.
How important is the failure in this case? The failure of that it, like as part of the work?
No,
the failure that it didn't perform financially, let's say, or in real terms.
No, I think to me it's a success, but but the world doesn't consider, like, the reality doesn't exist anymore, and it only manifests through capital. So in that sense, I'm really fine with it. But what motivated us is that, like, you see, you cannot really participate in the conversations of the use of data, technology, and stuff in that position, because what you're doing at the end of the day won't sustain. I mean, there is that limit, and I don't know. Yeah. Should and.
What are you gonna show us now?
Good propaganda. Huh?
What are you gonna show the next one?
Should I show more? Okay. I mean, maybe
weird economies, maybe, or Teslaism. I think can be interesting in that context.
Yeah, maybe I show a bit of Teslaism. I mean, I was thinking about it again in the context of Sheza's talk. like this figure of catastrophe. So basically, Teslaism is a project I made 2 years ago. Sorry, this talk is like so choppy and chaotic, but I hope you're enjoying it. Which it was a commission by the Tresor Techno Club in Berlin on the future of sound in Berlin. And so my interest in economics discipline, I took that question to, origins of techno in Detroit, which, it came out of black culture after the fall of the Fordist factory, so this moment called post-Fordism. So I kind of twisted the narrative to what is this new economic model that's coming out of Berlin after the building of the Gigafactory in Berlin, and I called it Teslaism as like this economic age that's already has emerged out of post-Fordism. And basically what Teslaism is it's a system of production and manufacturing based on advanced storytelling, financial fiction, world building by figures like Elon Musk. So it's like the centrality of that financial semiotic space that's kind of like building these words. So the whole film is basically my first attempt at working with game design engines, which also was a really fun process, and it made me think like, why haven't I used game design before thinking about finance? Like there's so much, conversation between game design and finance. So basically it's one long ride with Elon and his self-driving car down this like dystopian valley, going towards this shareholder after party. So there's something also about the idea of time that's very important there, thinking about financial time and catastrophe. As I've been thinking of how essentially finance capital avoids termination in a sense, but like you were saying in the previous talk, it also it's a dialectics between this figure of catastrophe and this lack of termination, and you have to really like play between those two spaces of like the dystopian catastrophic narrative plus like something that never ends. So the way that time plays out in the film was very death drivey, for the lack of a better word. Maybe watch a bit. Just like one other section. I couldn't get his hair right, so I made him wear the cowboy hat that he likes. plays in this like 7-stage game, and just maybe one last episode. Maybe just very quickly, I mean, for some of the writing, I mean, I had to watch like hours of interviews with Elon Musk, and some of it was, I mean, sadly, like I watched like Joe Rogan's interview, like some of his interviews with him. And there's, I mean, part of what I've been trying to do is to like think about this like, you know, financial subjectivity and the artistic subjectivity where they meet, and yeah, there's this kind of, some of you probably have heard this, that there was a point that Elon Musk sold all his houses, assets, and started renting. So Rogan is asking him like about this kind of the renting mentality, and basically he says, yeah, being a billionaire, like it weighs you down, like having material asset weighs you down. It's an attack vector. So there is something about, you know, this kind of like freedom of movement that these people try to personify, but also kind of like the renting culture in Berlin as some kind of a fashion trend. Like I think it tries to appeal to, you know, the look of, you know, the rentier capitalism as like some kind of an aesthetics. So yeah, just like some of the lines here comes from the.
It's a highly symbolic person and corporate company as well. How important is this symbolic element into bringing the messages across of the current moment in capitalist production, but also in artistic production, where the place where they meet? How important is to bring the symbolicism into the
Maybe
the
also that links well to Neil's work again. I mean, this is essentially, I mean, when I say art, I mean the the sum of symbolic, semantic, semiotic capital. And yeah, I mean, what I was trying to do with Teslaism, again, was to think about how financialization doesn't only work in that kind of like future market, future valuation, dynamic, which like people have talked about it quite a lot, which is quite detached from the world of matter, but like to link it back to that, the way that we used to tell economic history through car production and like, industrialization. And so I was trying to kind of like point out how, the symbolic capital doesn't only like, hang out in that like symbolic order, but comes back and shapes like, relations of production and how we, do things in the world of matters today too. Yeah.
Neil, for you, the kind of like the symbolic space or the symbolism which is evident and visible into the numbers, from the space of the gallery, for example, to the space of the currency somehow.
Not to me what happened the 3 last year mostly, but also with a big beta test during lockdown and an acceleration of access to certain tools or raise on certain technology, was that it felt to me that the fight for image was a bit over in a way, because with generative tools that can do them, and also like, and we've seen like through actually blockchain or different model of distribution. People investing in an image for the political model on top of which it was distributed. So it was quite horrible also to see sometimes, like it's a pure violent investment on an image. But that's also something that was interesting to me. It feels like we hid a lot of stuff of the world under change in communication or in symbols, rather than change in models. And so that's a bit kind of the shift for me, is that we tried with other colleagues to start to shift, meaning like try to find a position where we don't just talk about the symbol, just don't criticize what we do, just don't criticize something we cannot touch, because what is clear to me is that bankers became artists more and more, printing value and creating a narrative of. So this is supposed to be my job, to print money, and tech CEOs also took our vocabulary. So maybe we can take their job or something.
Can I ask you?
If you want accounts, you know where.
No. I mean, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So this is, when we talk about, utilizing sci-fi or like useful sci-fi, like I always think about the problem is not the storytelling, it's the means of storytelling, like who's backing up your story, like with which capital, or, just to be reductive, like who's backing up that fiction to make that fiction, project in the longer term. And like, we were talking about this earlier, like central banks have a way of backing up that fiction of money, which, crypto culture is now trying to reverse by building a community, like a fandom that can back it up. But when you talk about this, changing the symbolic meaning, like, do you also think about, the infrastructure that's supporting that symbol?
So that's a bit what we tried to do, but I don't know how long we have. But I can show some steps coming from slowly with colleagues. We started to work for and with technological fields and to be autonomous on technology on certain things. So we train models, we do economic protocols. For the moment, some stuff are still symbolic, even if they're real, at least. They're not, but I can show.
The PDF is...
Yeah. That's good also. That's not the PDF. It's like an automated... so that was... I'm going to talk about that small... So it's a cultural test. Still, but there is a micro blockchain protocol to distribute art, and what we tried to do on this project. So it's a collaboration between two artists, one that is that have an impact in digital culture world, and one that doesn't. And the idea was to try to make a protocol to exchange social capital for capital. So it's an experiment, but it's I'm going to show a creepy video if it goes through. So basically, I'm going to show the installation. So we distribute that to blockchain fairs and NFT fairs. So the experiment is that you have to log to the work out of your Twitter account. So your social network account, Then you speak with a chatbot that makes AI joke, and make jokes about your data, asking you personal question. There is a scan of your personal of your ass that create
Very person.
that generates those images. So the artist designing it is Nicolas Sassoon, so he's a pixel artist, and so it's so this image, when once done, this artwork or derivative of your experience is tweeted to you. If you repost, you become a distributor of the work, meaning it opens 10% of royalties for you. But also it allows you to enter into, like, there is this screen that is we had a robot lurker on Twitter that was making ratio on the likes you would have in order to gain a painting by another artist that didn't have clients. So the first artist would give 10% of every experience to the second one, and the second one was Victor Weiss that was doing those paintings with the portrait of everyone coming in live with this machine. And so so yeah, that's a bit the experiment. But what worked is that the two artists exchanged competencies and values, and the number are really funny. But I'm not going to do that. But yeah, and you have a postcard and stuff like that,
And the work still exists on X, on the platform, on Twitter?
No, on the blockchain.
On the blockchain.
Works exist, and the portrait of and people were fighting to take the social capital of everyone else because it was their body and metrics, and it's not a super good example, but it's one. I show another test.
Yeah.
So everything we do also is like to have access to the data ourselves, because if not, central structures do it. We made a project of a bar where people would again have a login and a username or a ticket. Actually, it works a bit like China, but and touch points on every work. So basically, in order to turn the light on, on a painting, you have to flash or you have to use your phone. But it's a game of attention economy, again, super visible, and you can play videos or the sound. So that's Dis, that's Courbet, other artists, and then we had tools to customize the works. The interest of tagging, of tracking people, so you can have a poem by Sibel also, or a photo booth by Darren Bader. What it was doing is that we had a live protocol that was connected to the ticket, the money of the ticketing, of the budget of the, that was spreading a fixed fee to everyone, but also playing, it's a test, an attention stuff to the artist in live, and at the end of the event it redistributes the money. And so what we played with visitors was to, they had 10 actions to do, and when they were doing actions they would get an economy too. They would get incentivized, and that was their only way to have drinks at the bar at the opening. So then we played again with different structures or museums, and you have the competition of the users and the most active ones. And you can then print a collective merch. I'm going to show. So there is that printer by an artist that was merging everything you decided to look into your own work. So a kind of live collective merchandising, and that created a new kind of revenue stream within the show. And in order to have access, you had to be active and to look and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and that's the bartender and the cocktail list. But,
I just want to know if there's any questions. We're running a little bit like later in the schedule. So if if you have any questions, maybe we can open this up and have a conversation. If not, I have one more question. How important is for both of your practices institutional spaces? Because this notion of decentralization is also a question on the space of institutions that actually are centralized spaces somehow. They work with centralizing artistic practices or an idea of culture. How important are they to the methods that you follow, or to the approaches which are highly focusing on decentralization, when actually like the institutions are the opposite somehow? It's more the centers.
So again, yeah, maybe this is actually where maybe Neil's kind of like departure from his previous work is slightly different than how I operate. Because I think I still operate between both spaces. We had a chat earlier. Like I make films that are distributed in kind of the normal institutional settings, but also I do projects like Weird Economies, which I still have a hard time describing how it links to the art world, because it really can't have an exhibition, type distribution. But I play, it gives me certain tools to play with what, like being an artist, like these kinds of like the symbolic, like, semiotic value of like, being in the art space, being called an artist, like what does those things enable in doing these kinds of projects. So for example, Weird Economies, we didn't get to talk about it much, but as it's basically this platform publishing place, it runs different projects on this intersection of art and finance through speculation. But part of what it tries to do is like there's a meta level of like weirding its own economy. So while it's currently funded by Canada Council, I mean, Kim Stanley Robinson was a great influence at some point to think about like whether we should invest some of that public funding in carbon coins, and both push for environmental, like do these kinds of like investments, like think about the question of investment funding more seriously. Where do you want to put your money down? Like ask those questions like in a kind of literal way. I mean, they didn't go through because like most of those carbon coin projects were a sham. I think even Kim Stanley Robinson at some point he was talking about like he regrets pushing for them. But yeah, this I mean, to think about money, basically, I think that's kind of where it puts you outside the institutional space, just to just to like say something on that point, because I think basically what it means to be in the institutional space is that you have to play this game of like you're critical up to the point of asking about money or like mentioning money as like something on the forefront. So the moment you put the question of money out there, you kind of like dropped out of the what ideologically the institution means. Which is a post-critical space. I think that's kind of where I want my work to also like operate, in this kind of post-critical space where money becomes important.
Neil, for you?
Like it depends on what actually, but what I showed were cultural tests, but then now that stuff have an activity of its own, and like it's obviously distributed through existing vehicles, and like the position this structure tries to have is an in-between, but I should have, in between traditional world and TikTok, basically, or in a weird way, because if we compare, like basically cultural models is like you have one cultural model that is like high dopamine, super fast, but a cap where you cannot produce out of the algorithm, and another model where you have an academy that is super slow to conquer, and that will have a bigger cap in a way of what you can do with it. And I guess like there is a bridge or a way of, yeah, because I'm sure there, like I'm sure I know actually there are good, beautiful cultural projects that happen through Instagram or whatever, like through young kids using that because they don't have access. But I guess there is a need for
the opposite way.
Yeah, and the bridge, like same, like there is a trade in a way, or.
How do you see the connection to AI to artistic practices now and in the near future?
I don't know if my work, like, I tangentially touch AI. I'm not like directly in there, but for instance, again, because like my kind of field is more like thinking about it through the evolutions in capitalism, for the lack of a better word. And maybe this like last project, there's no time to like show anything of it, but I can just talk over it. It's this financial sci-fi set in Hong Kong, narrated by Milton Friedman, who it's an opera. So Friedman was really big on Hong Kong. He thought of it as this kind of like exemplar of like free market capitalism, like how it functions so greatly. So in a way, like I was thinking about it as like how these past colonial projects like worked as some kind of a metaverse model for these economic thinkers. They're kind of like experimenting on their models in these little islands, which now is having a return in the special economic zones and the kind of neo-feudal, neo-colonial models of corporations, like buying, like we were talking about, like buying of like chunks of land from states because they say we run these better than you, which kind of is correct because the world has been run down so much that they just have a better chance at like providing jobs than some of these states do. But yeah, basically, I mean, I was playing with the idea of metaverse, gamification, that's where kind of the current, like the more current conversations on AI comes in. Yeah.
And for you, Neil?
No, so with that, with Eb and colleagues, we play with models and we play with protocols to track which artist is what, like in this experiment. So what not scares, but like I think there is the legacy of the 20th century that produced a lot of data that and now creates a bias, and it's going to influence a lot of people, a lot of works out of one century. So Picasso is going to be immortal, and if it doesn't serve society, then there is just in its like. And so what we try to do is that we start to do micro models with authors and artists, and we can play it to merge, but we calculate the weight of influence of one model or another, so we can also make an economy out of it. But I think everyone is going to use it because we already use AI to correct our emails, and I think that's going to be and I believe it's interesting that cultural people.
So you mean also that in the end AI will eliminate most of the culture production that has existed by the data keeping only some figures would have for whom much of data has been generated. But
if your orthographic corrector is mostly influenced by a dark right-wing libertarian, then when you will correct, I mean, and you won't even feel it, because it's the same way an algorithm doesn't make you feel it's controlling kind of your behavior, like giving you live feedback, like you have dopamine if you posted that and not that, so next time you're going to post twice this one, and it creates a behavior, like this one will be like quite stronger because it will interact with any gesture you do, and will be super efficient at producing something that looks like I guess. And the bias are crazy. Like for images it's crazy, for text it's crazy. It's really like super scary. It's like black portraits sometimes comes with shrouded stuff. Suburbs have gray sky. Women have big, like it's like really like the worst period of production of media has been the most prolific in datas. And social networks are recent. So it's at this moment is going to write what we use to produce for the next, I don't know how long. I don't know. It's
great. Well, maybe I think as we're also like a little bit behind schedule, maybe we'll wrap up here. I would want to thank you for being here and for your presentations. Thanks very much.